Okay, so this is a non-American paper. This is Sarah. Like you go to ski and you have your this and that's going to look at this. You get this. You should get the link on the presentation. Log in information to her. So. And then you should be able to split up.
Feel that.
And then I wasn't sure it's always but then, yeah, good.
Some more water and cups here.
What?
Oh yeah. Good to see you.
Good to see you. You're so recent. From New York.
That's right.
Oh my God.
Hi. Good. We're all sticking with it. Well, it's time to see Savita.
Yeah. No, but it's like we see you right now.
Why?
That's what it is.
Okay.
It's new.
Yeah.
You know, remember how we were teaching that cheap-hour class and I had to leave because it was too intense for me. When she was in Ohio, she tried to get me to do it. And like for not very long, it was very good. Yeah. 2 hours. Yeah. And I love out of meditation, sitting positions and that same thing I just sleep. All of it. Are you participating? Yes.
Yeah, you participate in your
Oh gosh. We just arrived yesterday and I know we arrived through the mountains of Pennsylvania, foothills. And we went to Chelsea and work today. Motherwell. Oh, yeah. I mean, charcoal. Yeah, just the simplest work. Really stunning.
Yeah.
Charcoal's very simple. I recommend it. And that's the one thing that sticks. Sometimes you go to Chelsea and it's
Oh, I know. It's like, really? Does it make sense?
It does.
I say,
How long are you in? Good. Good for this. The writing they did is very nice. Yeah, and like I like the questions they're asking.
Studies project name. Well, let's maybe we should all move in a little bit since we're a small group. Yeah. Yeah, we can. Great. Okay. Thanks for coming, everyone. Sorry, I'm not good at this. My name is LEGIBLE. I'm the director of Arts Programs and Memory Research. I also oversee the Studies Project series. Studies Project series is a series that's devoted to discourse around issues that are relevant to the field. They're instigated by artists. If any of you have an idea or discussion or topic that you really want to explore, we're open to any suggestions or proposals from the public. This is a particular studies project. It's part of our movement research festival, Spring Festival 2015, curated by Language Childs and it's a really beautiful. We've just started. This is the second day. It's been beautiful so far. I encourage you to look at that. Thank you. The festival brochures. There's just a whole range of events. There's outdoor events. There's a closing event in Mount Trembler, performances in the evening, dance party in a bar, kid-friendly event, workshop tomorrow. Really beautiful range of activities. Really thoughtfully put together. I'm really excited and grateful for doing the festivals. Studies project, what else? We are recording. Obviously, the audio recording is for a podcast that will come out in the future, relatively within a month or so. And that's a way to kind of archive this discussion and also get it out to people who weren't able to be in the room with us today. I think today we're also probably feeling it's like the smaller group because David's doing a discussion as well with the downtown Gibney space, which is also very important. So I think in particular it's nice to have this so that the discussion can, for people who weren't able to be here, they can access this conversation. We're also live streaming for people who can't be here in person. So just know that when you participate in the recording and live streaming. We can't take anything away from the live stream, obviously, but if there is something you said that you suddenly feel you don't want on a current record, you can let us know and we can remove it from the audio recording. Elevators shut down at 7:45. They'll probably be finished. Right, 8 o'clock. They'll probably be finished by then, but if not, at 7:45, so no one feels like they need the elevator to get down to the ground floor. So you have a good morning. Otherwise, it's 5 very steep flights of stairs. And MR stuff, right? I forgot all that. Stuff. So, festival brochures are here. Just 2 other things to call your attention to. Our annual gala happens June 8th, honoring This year honoring Maura Brennan, Terry O'Connor, Baby Miller. And it's our annual fundraiser, and it's a really beautiful way we can bring the community together. We have $25 performance room tickets, which is, I'm sure, the lowest ticket price for any gala in the city. And that's so we can get artists to actually be present at the event. It's really important to us.
You can also volunteer and come for free.
You can also volunteer and talk to Anna about that for free. Also, just so you know, the newest PJ came out today. This is the graphics today. And cover artist is Jennifer Lacey, who I just ran into here on my way into the studio. So she was a little terrified at looking at her portfolio, but you can grab those. Those are free. If you feel comfortable making a donation, these events are free, and it's a great way for us to keep them free. I think that's it. Did I forget anything?
Oh, only thing is, you do have tote bags for sale if you would like. It's a lovely black tote bag, designed by Yvonne Meyer, $5. So.
And again, purchasing something like that is just going to support programs and research. It's a little bit like a donation. Thanks. So I'm going to shut up now and start the conversation.
Thank you all for coming. I'm Sarah Maxfield, and I'm moderating today. I am a performer person, curator person, creator person. So I'm working on a project with some history elements and other things about place. On the air range. So that's a bit about where I come into this conversation. And to let you know, because I think sometimes it's helpful to know really close to what the plan is. And we'll be talking like this for about an hour until about 7:30. And then our plan is to stop around then, and we'll have some time for less formal conversation in smaller groups until the elevators shut down. And also to let you all know that we're seated kind of in this less formal arrangement intentionally, so that you're all encouraged to participate in the discussion at any point that you're interested in doing. But we do have a panel to try to seed things and keep the conversation going. That panel is the curators of the festival and some other folks who are going to introduce themselves.
My name is Layla Childs. I'm one of the curators for this festival. I'm going to leave it open and not describe myself too much in light of our previous conversation where we're starting to talk about how we talk about everything.
I'm Sunita Sinha, and I'm thrilled to be a co-curator of these two amazing people, but it's an amazing organization. And likewise, I've sort of sidled into this community sideways, and I'll talk about it.
I'm Liliana Goodman, and I'm one of the co-organizers of Panelists. I'm Lori Bird, and I'm the other co-organizer.
I'm Jamel Casaco, I'm one of the co-curators of the Movement Research Festival.
I'm Megan Bridge, and I direct a performance group and an experimental performance space in Philadelphia called Fidget. And I also direct an online dance competition called ThinkingDance.net.
And then there's all of you. What Lynn was reviewing and we were talking about before we started about thinking about how we place performance in context and how language plays such a strong role in that, for better or for worse. And thinking about some of the words that we use to place our own work and how that impacts how people may come into the work and words we use in different contexts that have different connotations about that work. So, and things that happen in the room, sound creates context. So maybe we could just pick up on that thread a little bit and talk about, how some of the struggles that we have listening to our work in context or work as curators, what we see generally we were discussing about how the struggle to create language that is accurate, we feel is accurate context for the work that we make, how that affects how we make choices around that. I'm looking at you. You said you were going to hold
I'll sort of try to do it. I'll try to do my attempt of today of how I might describe myself as an artist or maker. I make work with my creative partner Childs. We call ourselves by our last name Robin's Childs. I think lately we say that we make performance and video work out of, that stems out of dance. That's sort of how we often kind of frame it. Sometimes I call that movement-based work. Sometimes I feel like people will be like, "Oh, you're a dancer," and I'm like, I don't know that I feel like I'm a dancer. I don't know if I'm the dancer you think I am. So I get a little stuck there with just these basic ways of how I present myself out as an artist into the world. And as we were saying, when you're in certain contexts, you feel immediately sort of already understood, and you're like, now we can just talk about the work. We don't have to talk about the frame of that work so much. But yeah, I think it's a stumbling place, and I think it's an ever evolving place for a lot of us, that we try different words to describe different aspects of what we do. Different projects bring different things out as well. So I think sometimes the project might have a description, but so yeah, I think I don't have a really clear answer, and it does shift. Yeah, as a starting place. I might strike that from the record.
Did you want to pick up on that? You were talking about the framing, curatorial framing, and thinking about places.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there is a discomfort in that thing that happens, and I'm sure many of us have experienced, where you say that you're a dancer or you make dance, and people have a very limited concept of what that is, and they immediately picture high legs or like pasties. And however, I also feel strongly about wanting to educate or just bring a broader definition about what dance can be to a larger body of people. And that's, I mean, I acknowledge that my work is strongly based in a dance lineage, and it may look these days like some people's definition of experimental devised theater more than dance, and I don't take dance classes, but I still really do place myself in that context, because I want to continue to I want the broader understanding of what dance is to continue to expand and not be continuing to be hemmed in by these less productive understandings of what it is. So it's really tricky territory. Like in the publication Thinking Dance that I write for, there is a lot of conversation about like whether we cover devised theater or not, and a lot of times it comes down to how the artist identifies himself. So, yeah.
I'm thinking also about something that came up when we were talking earlier, and since you guys talked about how the effort to translate what it is that we do into language sort of reduces any of us, and I've certainly not this experience, into sort of like stammering, like trying to explain and wanting to just like shrink away from the conversation to try to make it come into language. And I'm thinking about what you were saying, I wonder if you can go into here about the primacy of language and whether or not that's fair to this communication.
Yeah, I'll rewind a little and just say that I'm someone who came into embodied work through music and through singing. And I came into singing through a need to understand where personal histories and collective narratives resurrect. And so I decided to choose singing traditional music as a way to access some sort of wisdom or argue with wisdom, and found myself in like Asian world, which really didn't feel good. And then started to go deeper into what really was under we call however, to create a new language, and was body and vibration. And very often substances that didn't have words that you could attach easily to it. And I found and continue to find it very difficult to talk about that place that I've also found to be the most rich for transformation. Like the deepest possibilities live right there before language comes. And language is also an important part of that field. But I think we are so anxious and we substitute some other kind of knowing with language that people start words and probably everybody in this room has some experience of a beingness that wants to be liberated from language, maybe. So to speak about, back to our theme about like legible, illegible, I'm very interested in what, and how things that to me are the most potentially powerful and transformative are also potentially the most illegible in this cultural moment, and to talk about how disturbing that is to me. And like what to do about that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you started by talking about looking at this like shared history with personal history. And I feel like there's really something in that that's relevant to this conversation too, about like as our shared history maybe becomes more fragmented and less discussed in a certain way, you know, we lose kind of the commonality of the context and different elements of it. And it's also about, you know, some of the things that you're concerned about too, with digital infiltration of our lives. How that experience in our day-to-day is impacting.
I guess I opened by just saying how afraid I am of media. And
Our live streamers.
it's become a fear on a number of scales, I think. One being how it creates less opportunity for social real-time engagement, and so we become less practiced at interfacing with each other and negotiating each other, and the differences and the similarities that we have. And that's a deep fear, because if we lose our ability to communicate essentially with each other as individuals, and I have to pull out my gadget gizmo to transmit a signal to my partner who's literally, you know, a feel away from me. That's really scary. And I think many of us are being socialized to operate in this way. And so a deep concern of mine in dealing with the content that we're approaching, I think, with illegible, has to do with creating some social maps that people can follow, that will lead us to each other, so that we can create more opportunities to practice this community, this being with each other, this sharing of information and concepts and ideas. And I think that's a very powerful tool that sort of combats the infiltration of the digital world. Yeah.
It's something to think a lot also about, you know, what I was interesting that you guys titled this discussion, because you know, it's like place is such a primary piece of it, and you know, the way you're talking about digital media is something I think about a lot with regards to lots of connection to physical places.
Yes.
Place becomes less physical. And you know, and then again, going back to kind of this idea of a shared cultural history of like thinking about the various diaspora that have happened over time, and people lose their place. there's like a very funny identity fusion that happens. And if you work in a sort of moment of that potentially, and I'm thinking about you guys, race is so important to the experience of ants and the way that you approach where you decide to place ants as really big part of practice. And it's a little bit of how you think about place as part of using those events and sort of how it impacts the experience.
But I mean, generally, also are the places that we hold ants, then those change a lot too. So like places we can, I guess, geographically always shifting a little bit. It really is about kind of the community of people just coming together and being there at a certain moment. I think we also depend on and use technology and the digital in an interesting way that I think it's interesting because I've watched people really like see the performances that they're watching through their phones, and I even do it because I want to like have digital records of what happened at dance online for people to see and then to maybe like attract new people later. But yeah, I have thought about like how that limits the like feeling of the performances and the connections between the audience and the performers. I think like when we have those like really intense late night oft performance parties, there are a lot of times where like you get this sort of like ecstatic level where the audience has reached a level of energy and the performances reach a level of energy that like people are just like so happy and you know like everyone finds new boyfriends and girlfriends. All this really great stuff happens. But but I don't know. I don't think that like technology is always the worst thing, but there's a lot of other like contextual frameworks that like box in where we're trying to explain it or make you understand it in a way that limits it a little bit.
I don't want to demonize technology either, by no means. I just want to say that.
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
I know it's interesting, like what Lily was saying about having your phone out and documenting and talking about language, and then what is video and how does that communicate an experience, especially if you're using a format that's like Vine or Instagram or whatever, and there's already a frame around it. But you're also sharing something that you saw, but you're not showing it through your own lens. I guess you are kind of through your visual perspective. But I'm curious about how that relates to, as opposed to going to an event and then writing something about it and reporting back, seeing the event as a whole, and then kind of talking about it. And instead of like showing like, this is 8 seconds of what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah.
And that is so easy to do.
It's become, I'm fascinated with this, actually. So this is how technology fascinates me.
There's also another, maybe this shouldn't all be what we can talk about right now, but there's a thing too when you're like at an event or anywhere and you take a picture and you post it to your profile, that like becomes part of your identity as a person.
Your timeline, right?
And there's two things that I feel like are coming up, like two of the things that technology adds to the mix are this idea of a future audience member being like in your experience with the present. Does that take you out of being a present audience member or not as bad, or is that future time comes into the same, and also this like idea of consuming the performance in a different way. Like I
consuming the things, and then the experience of the event gets reduced to a little bit that we can share and disseminate, right? But in addition to the imagining the future potential audience, there's also, I think, that the future self. I saw a performance last week that I was supposed to write about, and as I was watching the performance, I was slipping into my future self, sitting at my desk, like, what are the words that I'm going to translate this performance into, you know? Which I guess you could say sort of sadly took me out of being more materially invested in that moment. But on the other hand, for me, writing about a performance afterwards allows me to really go so much deeper into the experience of that performance and like unpack things on like a more idea level later on. So yeah, it goes a lot of different ways.
But do you have to go into a performance if you're going to write about it with a certain brain space, or can you allow yourself to go to a really experiential place and then come back out and write, or do you have to kind of keep yourself from slipping in there because that would be more bodily experience?
Yeah, well, I do take copious notes when I watch performance usually, and if it's dark, they're like all written on top of each other and stuff. But for me, that's like a really important way of getting started when I sit down to actually write something later. Is like I sort of trick myself into thinking that I'm not actually writing, I'm not generating, I'm just transcribing my notes, and then a piece ends up taking shape from that. But on the other hand, a lot of times I'm in that state of like, okay, I have to write, I have to take notes, and then I'm so drawn in by something in the performance that I realize, well, in half an hour has gone by and I've just been like not writing anything, and I can still write about it later. So it's funny, like it's almost like a strategy that I rely on that maybe I don't need to.
Another question is to expand on that. You talked earlier this idea of expanding sort of concepts and ideas around how we see work. You talked about that. Yeah. And I just wanted to sort of bridge that with your work at Thinking Dance and what that as a platform, a digital platform, has done to the way in which maybe Philadelphians and those who follow the work that's happening in Philadelphia understand what's happening in Philadelphia.
I think that it's done a lot in the last 3 or 4 years for the visibility of what's going on in the performance community in Philly. And in fact, just anecdotally, there was somebody who was based in DC and considering different cities to move to, and she came across Thinking Dance and started following the articles that we were posting. And because of that visibility and that as like a way into the community, she chose Philly because she knew that there was stuff going on there. So I do think that it provides an accessibility that wasn't there before. And I mean, it's amazing to me, like we get 5,000 hits a month, which I think is huge. I mean, if you know, in the web world, it's like not that big, but you know, and then during our festival month, during September, during the Fringe Festival, it goes like up to 10,000. And it's like it's people from all over the world are reading. It's like 150 countries or something. So it's really surprising to me. And I can say it's not Thinking Dance.
But I think it's so important, and I also love that. I mean, that was so much of the reason why I think it was just integral to have you sort of end this discussion, was to talk just a bit about how that platform is really operating and all of these various locations, and just what does that mean?
I think part of the success of Thinking Dance as well, and part of what gets people to keep coming back, is that we're very rigorous with the quality. Like that, each piece goes through a 2-tiered editing process. So a piece might go through 4 rounds of edits before it goes onto the site, and there's a huge educational component as well. So we have like
very interactive.
yeah, like we come together for meetings every month, and there's sometimes the meetings are businessy, but often there's an educational component in the monthly meetings, and then we also bring in people from outside to do like workshops several times a year. Like the first year when we were funded, we had Elizabeth Simmer come down and talking to friends and like some, yeah, anyway, so, but and that's still a big part of what we do is the educational aspect.
I'm interested in how you were describing sort of the process of seeing something to write about it, which is very familiar to me. Like I feel like there's a certain, and I do feel like the right for me too, like if I was gonna write about something, went in the head of like, I gotta write about this, I have to remember it in a certain way, like different kind of frame of myself to see. And I wonder sometimes, you know, with that interest in being someone who's very interested in writing that work, and be really grateful for the records that we have from previous times, and you know, anything we can look back at that shows us some idea of what's happening, but also knowing how incomplete and fragmented and biased those things are. Like I'm wondering how people are thinking or have ideas about how to keep the experience of the actual work and the making of the actual work more primary to the context, and the context be like a tool around experiencing the work rather than becoming the thing that lives the longest, you know, the time to view as the thing that lives the longest, or any other example.
I don't think I can respond directly to that, but I just going to put out there that in the practice that I'm doing right now with my partner, we're creating a series of pieces of material with a cast of other dance artists who are creating original strands of material, and then we're call it researching the material. So the format that we've chosen for this is just to watch a piece of material, and then we have some time where we work in a funny way in response to that, and then we write about it, and then we film it, document it, and then we talk about it. And I do feel like they really hit different kind of planes in the brain and the body. And I don't exactly know how to talk about it, like I haven't figured it all out, but I feel like there's a sense of, so then what people do with that information is that they take all of that documentation and then they use it to respond and make a response piece of material. So we're not trying to learn the material, we're sort of trying to be impressed by it in all of these different ways. So this is the exercise of how we're generating material right now, but I think one of the things that happens is people learn really differently, so there's an opportunity for people to engage in different parts of their learning intellect. And yeah, I think we had started in an earlier process with writing first or filming first. I can't remember if we did the order differently. We would leave the embodied sort of improvisational aspect last, and we realized that that was the sort of the closest way to glean the information was to do it in the same form, or to kind of embody what we could just see embodied. That made the sort of liminal the deepest in a sense, and the other stuff was a way to remember what you were sort of thinking about it. And now this is a totally different thing. It's not a critical piece of writing in any way, but we're just experimenting with how. And it's very subjective. We don't share notes with each other. The notes are personal, so each person has their own documentation strategy. So it's not exposed, but it becomes like, then we do talk about which tools people sort of ended up using more to kind of get to what they felt like they wanted to get to in the material. So I don't know, it's not really an answer, but it's sort of a way that I think I'm thinking about. We also have this side aspect of the project where we call it Ghosts of Performances Past, and we do recordings. Each different people in the cast will record a memory, a spoken memory of a piece that they've witnessed. And we try to sometimes do them from really a long time ago where we don't have notes and we've got your super foggy, totally, it's totally changed from, like Sonia and I did one of the same piece and she was like, our three, what do you think? Yeah, whatever, it was like, you just realize how kind of unreliable your memory is, and so we're kind of interested in that. I think that's part of the ephemera is that of what you can't say is allowing for that very personal, subjective experience to occur, and so then it is really hard.
Technology time and oral tradition or tradition or any other ways. And at one time, like major publication of the book was like a huge revelation for that kind of idea. How much is this trusting of the recording video that becomes fact in a way that your memory would never, but it's biased in a way.
Or equally lacking.
Right,
Sure. Or, that it's only a certain impression either way.
Right, but it carries sort of more weight as it doesn't sure.
It seems more real because you can rewind it, look at it again. It's like it's evidence. It feels like it's actually, even though it's sort of virtual, it feels a little. I mean, even when we were curating, I feel like we were sharing a lot of clips of artists, and sometimes you're like, but tell me what they feel like. Like I can't really.
That was your language.
Yeah.
Tell me how they feel. Or like I would do it like that. And yeah, I would love to, really talk about that a little bit more. Just, this sort of process of legible, and sort of how, we sort of come to it, and in the process of artists and the experience of all that, and placing them in very specific, locations all around, and the journey of that. I know we thought about this a lot, and I was just open up to that to the rest of us.
How did you guys talk about
One of the things so there's the dreams and then there's the logistics, right? So there's like the broad, we're gonna do everything, and then, okay, who said yes? Okay, so then there's the sort of riff off of what actually is coming in and gonna happen. But one of the things that we talked about was creating, trying to think about being in different boroughs of the city. That was one of our ideas, so that we were interested in thinking about how audiences might feel different in different places, and that if everything were to happen, the few familiar places, I don't even know exactly what those would be, that could potentially call a very certain audience, and could we outreach a different audience by being in different locations? That was something that we just explored.
We also have a secret build which I think is interesting to talk about, to betray our secrets, in like getting to the core of what actually concerned each of us the most, and as curators, as artists, and some of it were things that we wanted to state, and some of it was like, well, that's our understanding that will guide us as we create this festival, and it's like a lot, and some of it is wordless actually, and some of it is live that we spun between the three of us, or among the three of us. Over time, there's a very clear something that was shared, and I think trust.
Yeah.
Again, a trust is very much, I think, if it were a solo curation,
And
solitude.
framing, yeah.
And I think also just the attention that you bring to me, so specifically to just the audible and the sonic value that so much of the dance world, so much of the sonic value that encapsulates the choreographic. Yet we spend maybe not as much time choreographing. Does that make any sense? Like choreographing a sonic environment, you know, that we
Or
don't
the
feel
attention that we're not giving to
that.
the nuance of sound
Exactly.
in the work.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. Thank you.
I mean, and obviously not always, but that.
Yes. Not as much as we give to the body, to the physicality, to the instrumentation and the visual, but to have this attention to the sonic. And like I think, you know, Sunny's opening of the entire event, that really creates a very specific sort of entry point.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. Well, maybe Samantha can talk
Sure.
about it.
So Sunny Jane is a violin player and a drum set player, and we wanted, we called last night opening, and we wanted it, in part it's also one of the words in our title, which is opening beyond the space of identities. So we wanted there to be an action of an opening, in addition to it being the opening night in that obvious way. But so we all agreed we wanted a sonic call to do that, to sort of like clear part the waters or something. And
Or like move into the cells. Like that's kind of sometimes how I think of.
we talked about vibration.
I feel like sometimes when you have those like epiphany sound experiences, it comes in and it doesn't go. Of course, it's coming into the brain, but it feels like it goes into the cells of the being without the thinking, which sometimes can also really happen, of course, in dance forms and other forms as well. But I find that can be very, when it's potent, it can be very direct.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to say something which is funny to be, because I celebrated that so much and lived for that. And yet I find myself in a space, in a performance context, where there's a lot of talk about what it's about. What is it about?
Right.
And but I also will say that this community, the MR community, this particular sort of broader community that I found so much, I got to have some of the most community-based thinking and most, some of the most healing, really, conversations and art practices that I've encountered have been in this community that are not in the realm of being found. That are actually quite the opposite. And that's there also. But my interest and my passion, and it's also so female compared to music worlds. Which somebody was saying dance is so male yesterday. I was like, but music is so male. Like you don't even know. And how and so to enter this space that's like where the body is reclaimed and where the female voice is strong.
Well, I think in this specific discourse, I think we really wanted to make that strength apparent. At least that was certainly a concern of mine. And creating that space and continuing to create that space, because I know sometimes it is not well served, and that perspective is not well served. And I think that goes across all genres, actually, because we live in America. But
Just to make a circle, I cut myself off and describing Sunny.
Oh, right.
I just want, I don't think I have to finish that, but I think the interesting thing about that was that to talk about the directness of sound as something we wanted to weave in, but also something that dovetails interestingly with this crisis of language.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I think I'm also glad you brought up this concept of community, because I feel like that's something that's sort of coming up to the forefront of this too, that there's something about having a community around a certain context. And how do we, part of the crisis of language is how do we kind of translate that beyond the community that's just drawn to it naturally? How do we like invite others to participate in that community and expand that community? And kind of the natural go-to is language, because I think that we often more commonly share. And so what are some other strategies that we can use to use language more, or use other things to like find ways to expand the community and create connections between communities?
I was just thinking about, sorry.
Please.
No, just thinking about, you all talking about the structure of the festival. The Movement Research Spring Festival, which always takes on different forms, and the way that you can kind of create a bunch of events that you want like one community to experience, like in some way, so that they get this certain, I don't know, it has some, that's what you're trying to say, I guess, like by having all of these different events. Or it can be this collection of many events. You're talking about spreading it out through all the boroughs, and that maybe not everyone in this particular movement research community can attend, but people from other communities will intersect, and they might only go to one event, but somehow that causes an intersection, and that is a communication. And so it happens out here. It doesn't happen all in one circle, but all the circles intersect. So one person might come to your event, you know, at Mount Tremper, and then they'll be drawn into this community, but in a way that actually it's not.
Or they don't have to be drawn into this community.
They don't, but they know what it
still
is.
have their stuff, but we can still influence each other. That was one of our little like things. I'd say community, and then we'd say whose community.
Right.
Because that can feel almost also exclusive, or like this sort of assumption that we're all talking about the same community, but do I totally feel part of that community? I don't know. So I think that can be like a comforting place and also a distancing place to assume.
It's all super interesting. I remember Sumita talking a lot about, I can't remember if this is before or after I asked you, the curator, talking about like, there's so much, I see so much similar terrain with my colleagues in the music field as I do with my colleagues in the dance and performance field, that I just want everything in the same room together. And that was, maybe sometimes it's as simple as creating an opportunity for people to come together. And that also makes me think of dance, and just thinking back to my experiences performing dance, and how it's just by its very nature, it's a social engagement. It's like you sit, first you go into the space, and it's kind of nerve-wracking as I recall, but first you go into the space and you figure out where you're going to do it. Then you have a meeting, right, in a circle, and you negotiate with other people who might want something similar. How do you work around that? And then you negotiate with the crowd who feels equally empowered in being in that space. And all of that is just not a real life navigation, which just making me think about the difference between that and kind of technological, maybe checking out or keeping it at a super distance. I just think, and the thing about thinking dance too is another way to kind of take the ideas and bring them up and out and give them visibility. Just the feeling that all of you, there's so many ways to approach this kind of engagement.
to speak briefly just on I mean, we had a lot of conversations on healing and recovery and trauma, just like all of these things that hold, yes, ability and so there is this, because the healers in our community, so many of us, we sort of serve as healers also, like some kind of body-based thing. Like, so whether it's sonic medication or yoga or some sort of somatic practice, or and I think the healers that also, there's a number of healers that keep us operating, like really work to help us keep making work. Without the healers, then we would all be broken and not able to, display this work. And so to have, workshops with, that cover, the medicine of art, or, with Paulina Oliveros, who is such a healer in her practice and sharing. I just think it's important that we sort of name explicitly as a sort of more implicit tool, but certainly something that we were thinking about in building the nature of the festival.
I think it was happening in our trio that there was some kind of, we wanted to move ourselves into like a positive space in this process and hopefully encourage that would happen for others as well in some way. And so, right?
Yeah, I mean, unique work was really important. We made every moment. So whether it was dinners or just, just beautiful moments in the thinking of the festival and the creation of it.
And a lot of the unknowns, so I think the what did we say, the mess of the package, the unnameable, the unfinished, the
creating space.
making room for, the undefined in some way. And I think movement research that's very much a part of movement research, is that the research aspect of not the product so much aspect. But somehow but then I think, so then to give some power to words, I think sometimes in the saying of things is also the vibrational, like, expansive potency of that too. Like, when you kind of decide to claim it by words, even if some of the words are a little messy, that it can be very focusing when we talk about using the aperture of widening to kind of understand where we're going, and narrowing a little bit, opening and closing, and kind of finding. That was very much our intuitive way of finding our way through many of our choices, and there was a lot of intuition. And
actually, we have a very robust curatorial statement. Speaking of language, we name a lot of things, and we say a lot of things fairly pointedly. And I think that's in no contradiction with the wordless. That's in like full concert with the wordless. Well, I just want to say one more thing about this, maybe the healing aspect or concern was is a giant challenge, because so much language around healing in our culture is consumption oriented and has been debased on so many levels, either by a lack of depth or a consumption orientation that is it's very hard waters to navigate as a list, and I don't really have much more insight other than to band together with young people sharing their views and trying out. And I don't really know how to
Well, there's a lot of different things I can say about that. I mean, so our editing process, we have a pool of editors, and everybody's different, and everybody has different processes that they go through. Some editors offer suggestions, and some editors will actually rewrite your piece, and it's always transparent. I mean, it's like, you know, the writer can then accept or reject the changes, and there's dialogue back and forth. But it's an ongoing question within our community of writers about language and how simple or how complex we want it to be. And so in our first year, we had a lot of these sort of more traditional dance critics that were coming to visit, and were encouraging us to. It's like a certain generation, I think, of dance criticism, which really favors simple language and also descriptive language. And there was and is a concern about not going too far into the realm of ideas, because there's a fear that the body will disappear. The whole organization, but we have an editor-in-chief who deals exclusively with content and pitches, and she is amazing, and she's a poet. She's like a creative writer and a poet. So that's her background, and she has a dance background as well. And she is very dedicated to pushing the form and like encouraging writers to be brave and take more risks with their language. And so there's a real kind of dance between the simple and direct ways of writing about the work and trying to push into different, more expansive forms.
I also really gave you guys a chance to add to what Levi was saying about this sort of creation of this shared decision around the chance that how we can get a group of people to see things about the concepts of development.
I mean, I think that we have struggled a lot with putting language around the ants, because by putting language around it, we're actually preventing what happens on the inside of an ants event from happening. The two of us as organizers decide too much about what's going on. And when we do events, we don't want to put some overarching context on it, like a theme or, you know. So I think that we've been trying to figure out how we can be as clear as possible with as few words as possible, but also leave it really open and malleable. And it's been hard, because for a while we just didn't say much. And that's always I have a lot to say about that, but I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to. Because it's like a protection. Yeah, because part of it is about doing it. For us, a lot of ants, or a lot of things I do, it's really about doing it, being there, experiencing it, doing it. And you know, it's hard for me personally to talk about it too much, because then I don't know how to do it anymore.
With the project that we just did at the museum, Ants for Camera, that spanned from like September in the fall to February, we were really kind of required to put a language to this, in part because we were bringing Travis Chamberlain, the curator, there into the process, so we needed to really like go through with him and unpack what it was that Ants does and kind of like the rules that we use, so that we could make decisions on how to structure the exhibition and the residencies, like all the way through, and have that be something that was really ants-like. And then we were also curated through the education department, so they kind of have that agenda of educating the general public about the art that is within the museum and just, at large and what's contemporary, whatever their mission is. So we had to kind of like fit within that a little bit.
Did that frame alter? I mean, obviously it must have, but
It did.
how did it, or how did you experience that?
I thought it was good because I think we understand so much more about what we do right now. The two of us work very intuitively together as like curator, organizer people. Like we are almost always on the same page about what decisions to make. We don't really need to talk too much about it. Like if something's missing from an event, we know, and we're trying to like come up with a solution to it before even having to discuss that there's a problem. So,
but it makes me think about the language that we use for the new museum, which it felt like it was time to do that because we are interested in kind of disseminating that model out. So we were like, oh, well, how do we teach this to high school students? How do we talk about this? But we had done 30 events or more before we did that. I'm thinking about like a dance performance or something where you haven't done it before and you're trying to write about it and you haven't done it yet, or you've done it in rehearsal. I feel like we literally have done over 30 events,
Right.
and we've done it over and over again. So now we're like, okay, we've looked at it from many different angles. We're ready to talk about it. For me, I always feel like that's a big disconnect with dance and kind of everything that you're doing
So
because you
early,
haven't done it.
yeah.
I mean, how do you do that? That to me, that's a really
Feels like a
difficult thing
lot.
as a choreographer. I have a hard time.
But Laurie, are you talking specifically about the way you have to talk about it for institutions? Because you can write about it without trying to define what it is, just as a way to process your process.
Yeah.
I just want to be more specific. Is it about defining what you do in relation to the demand of defining what you do? Are you talking about?
I think it's both. But definitely the context of the institution, and not just this one, but others. It's places and different constraints. I mean, institutions are what they are. The movement research is an institution, but I think for us it's been good because it has extended the work and the artists that we work with into a bigger audience, and having more people kind of understand what you do and that it's valuable, or maybe not that it's valuable, maybe it's just fun and entertaining is all it is.
Ask or add or
Well, I was thinking about this talk about the medium of performance and what is translatable to some other form like video or text or like if we talk about these things that are beyond words, especially, or the vibrational or something that is experienced by these people who come together in a room and it's just about what happens between us. So when we start to translate that into this sort of popular media mediums or media like video, which can be put online, or text which can be published, like what really happens, or is it possible, or should we do it? Should we just forget about trying to write about dance or music, or should we create other methodologies? I don't know. Like I've been writing quite a lot of reviews as well, and some from dance, and it's really difficult always to write about dance for me, especially if it's not like theatrical or conceptual dance, but something more about just the movement or somatics or something. I don't even remember what happened, and how can I write about it? And somehow it just goes through the moment and through my mind, and some same can happen with music, which has no words, or like yeah, I don't know what the question is. Maybe like should we try to create like some methodologies for this, or should we just get more value appreciation in the society for forms that are not these hegemonic forms of video or text, or what, like, is there any answers to this? Or is it a problem at all? I don't know.
Well, it makes me think about something I was thinking about earlier, about the way that text can function very differently in different contexts. And so, like when I was talking about how I write a lot when I see a performance, part of that for me is because I try and keep my writing to like an almost visceral response, or like images that were like words, literally words that float into my brain when I'm seeing a dance, and it conjures up like certain responses, and that those notes are often more affective or like emotional, physical response, or intuitive or something. And then, but if I don't take notes and I just try and rely on my memory later, then it's much more functionally descriptive. And while that serves a certain purpose, to me the writing is often less interesting than the stuff that I like kind of stream down as I'm watching. And so
it's kind of more poetic.
Yeah, exactly. And so I feel like one of the things you're talking about maybe is this issue around how a review functions. Like, how can we get textual responses to work, to performance work, move out of the area of judgment, like that was good, that was bad, that was successful, I liked it, I didn't like it, and function more sort of poetically in relationship with the work, and respond maybe on a conceptual or idea level, or maybe respond on like a sort of more visceral, intuitive way to make the language be responsive to the more like unspoken or illegible aspects of the performance.
In relation to that, I was thinking, take the risk of even saying on a personal level how the work might have had some healing power on you. That like to try to describe that.
Yeah, like really trying to locate yourself, and like, I mean, sure, perhaps maybe there's like a disclaimer or like a bias, like a revelation of personal bias or something, but not necessarily that. Like also just like locating your like allowing the eye to be present in the writing.
It makes me think of Jill Johnston, who's radically good at that. She was writing arts criticism. But also this is one of the things I think is a positive result of technology. I mean, in the time since I've lived in New York, when I first moved here, I feel like the only platform for dance writing was the Times Review. That's a really limited platform. It's like, first of all, it's judgmental. Second of all, they have the limits of space and publication and those commercial considerations and all of that. And since I've been here, I feel like with digital platforms increasing, blogs, you could argue there's maybe less vetting of writing, but there's more voices. And I feel like that's really positive. And I feel like, when we started Critical Correspondence, that was an effort to get artists' own language about their work to be visible. So it wasn't just the language of the Times Review. And then now I feel like there's a lot of cross-disciplinary writing. Like I think of, and this has good and bad implications, it's complicated, but there is something beautiful about like art form is writing about dance performances. They're coming at it from a really different place than the New York Times is. Brooklyn Rail is right, it's like these different venues where writing can almost cross through different disciplines and has readership of people that are invested in different disciplines.
And I want to also encourage you to see what Rebecca Davis did, because it's really beautiful. She invited 5 poets to write about her work, and there was a book published as the piece came out, and that's and these beautiful pictures. And she said that she wanted to have more than the reviews and her own writing and her grant application, so she invited that. And for myself, I mean, the only reviews that I put are reviews from poets or philosophers that wrote on my work, because the rest is not speaking about the work really, because they have a very limited exposure to the work, and they have to write really fast. It's a very hard work to do. So
And they only see it once.
yeah,
I mean, I think that's like, I was thinking, like, if you could see the work and then go back and write, I mean, I'm sure that's a luxury if there's so much. But that's like, you still know you were gonna write about the work, so you're probably still in a headspace, but it'd be like your past to just try to be with the work and then write the work. I think it's that just be like another layer, but I mean, that's.
yeah. These writers follow the work for 3 years. So it's a really a very beautiful thing that was done.
I mean, I think that's a great example of an artist curating the entire experience of their work. And that's something that I really want to advocate more, is sort of the artistic responsibility behind that kind of ownership and that framing of how will my work live when it's, I mean, you know what I mean, but how will it continue? How will it not be documented? How does it push beyond the ephemera of the moment? How will it be seen years from now, centuries from now, whatever? And I don't know how often we think about that deeply when we sort of go about making or constructing.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say about, I don't know, but I think that there, I don't know, it's tricky, I don't know, I guess just there's such a difference between, somebody who gets to really get to know the work by sitting on a rehearsal or seeing performances multiple times and then being able to write about it, because obviously they're going to be writing so much more about just one moment, right? Like one iteration of the thing, you know. But I don't know that would necessarily be more valuable than somebody who, say, doesn't even consider themselves much of a writer, you know, but maybe they go to a performance and then they now, luckily through technology, like through the weirdness of technology, they have the opportunity to write a response to what they saw in this one moment, which is going to be the same situation for most people who are seeing the piece. Like, they're going to see it once. They're going to see that time. They might not know that much about the choreographer or the performers, or especially if they're not so much a part of the community. For someone who does live in the other world or whatever, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I think that their response is just as valuable and just as interesting, just as useful as kind of part of this notion of like how can we archive and how does it kind of like live beyond that moment?
No, I completely agree. It's just you have different things.
Yeah.
It's like you have a palette of possibility, and that's what's interesting. KJ was answered to that because we worked with the performance together, that she's interviewing the audience, and she writes the audience. There are different ways of. Sometimes we need one thing, sometimes we need the other.
And the more context you can collect, the more you can refer to the point.
So there's one thing I want to say about Chicago to tie into that, so not just writing, but I was reading that book, What Technology Wants. It's like kind of telling the traveler biography. And it's like a huge book, and it goes through the history of technology, starting from animals and the Stone Age, and speaking of everything as tools, including what crows invent, like wire loops to try and like extract food from different crevices, and or a stone as being a tool, and our little gizmo gadgets as being as simply tools in a sense as that we're in this fatigue and saturation mode with them right now, like giantly global infatuation with technology that makes us a little bit dim-witted. yeah, like a little teenage. But like maybe there's some platform waiting to be invented on technology that can within like the technological realm that can give an intelligent response space to this innovation. That's just called.
So this is really great. So many thoughts going on, but it just reminds me of something like a tutelage of some kind, like this coming together, and I'm hearing all these things about language and writing and tools and technology, and just wondering, just to go back to you guys, about how you might think of bringing other disciplines in as to kind of help and learn from each other. Because for me, it's like, you know, I do work with technology and embodiment, and I used to be like you know, I used to be so afraid of it and be like, this is so foreign, like how does this connect to something that's so organic, you know? But at the same breath, it's like I learned so much from it as well, and how it can be used in a very positive way. And in many ways, and in many platforms. And so so one thing that comes to mind in talking about writing is there is a platform called Triple Canopy, but they do have like open software. So I'm not going to go code this out, but like it is something to sort of maybe just even research and maybe find ways, because I have gone on their website and been supposed to have been, and it is really interesting how they bring in language and the text, the visual image, and they're actually using it in ways that's more like user-friendly, that's not so much about being like in this sort of mode, but having it be a little more like interactive and tactile in a way. That's so. And I thought about how this could relate to performance, or you know, or tie it to those kinds of things, which I asked a colleague of mine, and she hosted them at one of her events in Los Angeles, and she was like, oh, that's really interesting, like she never really thought about it at the time. So like, so just sort of like thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think to kind of bring it back to the theme of the festival, for to small business formal, you term before, as we were talking about these different elements, kind of what you're bringing back too, that it's almost like out of this idea, there's two tracks. There's the track of learning how to kind of translate the work that we do into these other formats and learn about them and how we can use them to better represent the ways that we do, and also another track of increasing literacy so that dance itself is more legible, or how-based performance, whatever it is that we're doing, it's hard to describe in words, but it can be more legible in terms, and doesn't always have to be translated into another document. Sometimes it's just experience. So like both of those things are important together. So is there anything else you guys want to add?
A copy of Happy Ends.
There's a quota.
Tie this right on. But just as a point of clarity, you know, when I mentioned my fear of technology, it's not. Yeah, I mean, I'm not. You know, I'm not saying that. I don't want to demonize. I spend too much time, you know, like in front of my monitor, which is devastating to me, and that's something that I'm deeply afraid of. But I meant the social implication that the digital realm has on as being able to relate to each other. And what does that mean for young people, our children coming up and like they're swiping books and expecting for something to.
They swipe windows.
They swipe windows. What is this world that we're creating? I'm afraid, I'm intrigued. We just don't know what the future is, like the way.
There's a book called The Past Future. It's a very interesting book, and it explains exactly how what does into the nervous system, how that began with the last century, and how the movement of the future is this book propelled towards the future. It's very, very interesting.
Is it optimistic?
If Daria's reading, it probably is.
I was thrilled because I felt like, oh my God, this is what I've been thinking forever. And it speaks a lot about language and how language actually contributes to that making. It's fascinating.
The word like is really taken on in
Like. So,
Oh. You needed the physical.
I think I'm trying to be strong.
You're better off.
Thank you guys so much for being on the panel. Thank you guys for coming and talking. And please, if you've got time, stay and chat a bit more.
Come to every vegan festival.
Yes, for sure.
I just want to say one thing about the healing. Just want to say one thing about the healing. Because, there was a time where the state are not separated. And to reflect on why it was separated is very important. Because it's really capitalism and Christianity. And I'm really, there's an incredible book about that too. And that deconstruct all that history. And so I think that there was a time where theater and dance and music and poetry were not separated, and it was creating another universe. The relationship to remaking the universe is a thing that we are trapped in, and
it's just thinking of the word light, which is to me. So.
What's the name of that book? I'm going to put together a bibliography.
yeah.
We should.
We should, yeah. I think we can be on the blog.
Yeah. Let's do it. Go on.
So I'm very dyslexic, but if you go to
Yes. I wrote down too because I'm also very dyslexic.
and it was a complete situation, and we ecstatic.
I'm always yes.
But I kind of
How we can get right. Yeah.
although I also feel like
When you come outside it looks like you used to when I wanted to.